For 5 years, Eleanor cooked their meals, cleaned their house, raised their little boy, and helped pay for the roof over their heads. Then one night, she heard her daughter-in-law whisper that it was time for her to figure something else out by breakfast. Eleanor placed 2 documents on the kitchen island, one showing the value of every unpaid hour they had taken from her, and one proving they had forgotten she owned half the house. Eleanor sat on the balcony of her leased downtown apartment, swirling a glass of Merlot. The evening breeze carried the faint hum of city traffic, a rhythm she had grown to love over the past 6 weeks. On the glass patio table, her phone vibrated wildly. It was the 7th missed call and the 15th text from her son, Mark, in the last 2 hours. She didn't need to pick it up to know what it said. The preview on the screen flashed. "Mom, please pick up. Chloe is crying because the after-school sitter canceled again, and I have a huge deadline. We really need you." Eleanor took a slow sip of wine and let the screen go dark. A year ago, she would have grabbed her keys and rushed over to save the day, ignoring her own exhaustion again. But not tonight. Tonight, she felt only quiet peace. She was not angry anymore. She was done. She looked out at the glowing skyline, thinking about how drastically her life had shifted in just 6 weeks. For 5 long years, she had been the invisible pillar holding their household together. She had sold her own cozy suburban home to help them afford their sprawling 4-bedroom townhouse. She had cooked, cleaned, and raised her grandson, Leo, so Mark and Chloe could focus on their careers. She had done it all out of unconditional love, believing they were a team. 6 weeks earlier, the illusion had shattered. Eleanor finally saw her role in their lives for what it truly was. They did not see her as a mother or a respected partner in the family. They saw her as a convenience, an unpaid employee they could not fire but clearly wanted to replace. As the wine warmed her chest, Eleanor closed her eyes and let her mind return to that Tuesday night, the night she heard the conversation that changed everything. 5 years earlier, when Chloe was pregnant with Leo, Mark and Chloe could not afford the home they wanted in their preferred neighborhood. Eleanor, a retired high school English teacher and recent widow, wanted to be close to her only grandson. So she sold her 3-bedroom house and put half the proceeds toward the down payment on a beautiful townhouse. The other half went into conservative investments under her own name, because after losing her husband, Eleanor had promised herself she would never be completely dependent on anyone again. At Eleanor's insistence, her name was placed on the deed, and a simple co-ownership agreement stated that she owned 50% of the home's equity. Mark had agreed without much thought at the time. He needed her money, and Eleanor needed the security of knowing she had not traded her entire future for a promise. In exchange, she was given the first-floor guest suite. At first, it felt fair Eleanor had private space. Mark and Chloe had their dream home, and Leo had his grandmother nearby. Then the boundaries blurred. "Mom, can you watch Leo for an hour?" became, "Eleanor, since you're home, could you start dinner? We're both working late." Before long, Eleanor was working a full-time job she had never applied for. She packed Leo's lunches, did the laundry, stocked the fridge with her own pension money, and watched Mark and Chloe thrive while they left for work trips, late nights, and weekends away. Eleanor never complained. She loved Leo and wanted Mark to succeed. So she swallowed her exhaustion and told herself this was what good mothers did. She stayed quiet when Chloe criticized the way she folded towels, and when Mark forgot her birthday because he was swamped at work. She kept telling herself they appreciated her. But resentment had already begun to grow under the surface. The fragile peace broke on a Tuesday night. Eleanor had gone to bed early with a mild cold. But around midnight, she woke up thirsty. On her way to the kitchen, she saw the living room lamp glowing and heard Mark and Chloe whispering. She stopped only because her name caught her ear. "I'm just tired of it." "Mark," Chloe was whispering, her voice tight with frustration. "I feel like I can't even walk around my own house in my pajamas. She's always just there, hovering around us." "Chloe, she basically runs the house," Mark replied, though his defense sounded weak and tired. "We don't pay for childcare. She cooks. What do you want me to do?" "I want my space back." Chloe snapped softly. "Leo is in kindergarten now. We don't need a live-in nanny anymore. We can hire after-school help when we need it. My mom wants to move closer, and she could actually use that downstairs suite. Your mom has been here for 5 years. It's time for her to figure something else out." Mark sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I can't just kick her out. She sold her house to help us buy this place. Where would she even go?" "That's exactly the problem," Chloe hissed. "She has nowhere to go, so she thinks she can just stay forever. You need to drop a hint. Mark, tell her we need privacy. Suggest she look into a small senior living apartment. She has her pension. She'll be fine. I just can't do this anymore. I want my mother here, not yours." Eleanor stood in the hallway without moving. For a moment, all she could hear was the refrigerator humming in the kitchen and Mark's tired breathing from the sofa. She did not gasp. She did not cry. She simply understood, with painful calm, that they had already started planning a life without her. Then she turned around and walked back to her room. The next morning, the house was unusually quiet. By 7 o'clock, Eleanor was usually frying eggs, packing Leo's lunchbox, and brewing coffee. But today, the kitchen was dark. Mark came downstairs confused, and Chloe followed with a fussy, half-dressed Leo. "Mom!" Mark called out, knocking lightly on Eleanor's bedroom door. "Are you awake? We're running late, and there's no coffee." The door opened. Eleanor was fully dressed in a crisp linen suit, her makeup neat, her hair brushed back, looking nothing like the tired grandmother who usually started their mornings in sweatpants. She walked past them straight to the kitchen island and set down a thick manila folder. "I'm awake," Eleanor replied. Her voice was quiet, but it left no room for delay. "We need to talk. Have a seat." Mark and Chloe exchanged nervous glances but sat down on the bar stools. Eleanor opened the folder. "Last night, I overheard your conversation," she began, holding up a hand to stop Mark as his face drained of color. "Don't apologize. You don't mean it, and I don't want to hear it. You want your space. Chloe, you're absolutely right. It's time." She slid a paper across the counter. "This is an invoice. I calculated 5 years of nannying, housekeeping, and cooking, then cut the number in half because we are family. It comes to roughly $150,000. My lawyer will include it as part of the full picture, even if a court treats it differently." Chloe gasped, her eyes wide. "Are you crazy? We can't pay. That we don't have that kind of cash." "I'm not finished." Eleanor pulled out another document and placed it beside the invoice. "This is our co-ownership agreement. I own 50% of the equity in this house. If you want me out so your mother can move in, you have 2 choices. You can buy out my half at current market value within 30 days, or my lawyer will begin the process to force a sale. Either way, this house will no longer be used to trap me." For several seconds, no one moved. Mark stared at the documents on the counter, his face losing color by the second. Chloe opened her mouth, closed it again, and looked at the folder as if it had changed the shape of the entire room. "Mom, please, let's just talk about this," Mark finally stammered, panic rising in his chest. "We didn't mean it like that." Chloe was just stressed out from work. We love having you here. We need you here. Eleanor looked her son directly in the eye. No, Mark, you don't need a mother. You need a free employee. And I am officially submitting my resignation. Chloe crossed her arms defensively, though her hands were shaking visibly. You can't just leave today. Who is going to pick Leo up from school? We both have important meetings all afternoon. Eleanor smiled, a sharp, polite expression that didn't reach her eyes. That sounds like a problem for his parents to solve. Leo is loved, and I will always be his grandmother. But love does not mean I have to keep rescuing two adults from the consequences of their own choices. I suggest you start calling daycare centers immediately. As for me, I have an appointment with my lawyer at 11, and then I am checking into a hotel. She turned and walked back into her suite. Her bags were already packed. 3 suitcases sat by the door. She left the room mostly untouched, a quiet reminder of her ownership, and took only her clothes, jewelry, important papers, and the framed photo of Leo beside her bed. When Eleanor rolled her suitcases into the hallway, Mark was frantically scrolling through his phone, trying to find a last-minute babysitter, while Chloe stood in the corner of the living room, wiping her face with the sleeve of her blouse. Eleanor paused at the front door. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the buyout options, Eleanor said over her shoulder. Until this is settled, remember that half of this property is still mine. Then she stepped outside, and the front door clicked shut behind her. The first week without Eleanor exposed everything Mark and Chloe had refused to see. The laundry, dinners, school pickups, clean counters, and stocked pantry had not been happening by themselves. It had all been Eleanor. On Monday, Mark left work early to pick up Leo. By Wednesday, toys, dishes, and laundry had taken over the house. They ordered takeout every night and burned through their grocery budget in days. Desperate, Chloe called her mother, Linda, to come stay. Eleanor's lawyer had warned them not to touch the first-floor suite, so Linda took the upstairs guest room instead. But Linda viewed visiting as a vacation. She slept in, expected breakfast, complained about the mess, and scoffed when Chloe asked her to watch Leo. Oh, honey, I've already raised my kids. I'm here to visit, not to babysit, Linda declared, flipping through a fashion magazine on the couch. Chloe locked herself in the bathroom and cried. She missed Eleanor's dinners, the fresh coffee, and the quiet order Eleanor had brought into the house every day. She had mistaken Eleanor for a burden. Now she was beginning to understand that Eleanor had been the structure holding their life together. Meanwhile, Mark met with a mortgage broker. The news was worse than he expected. With current interest rates and their credit card debt, they could not afford to buy out Eleanor's 50% share. By the end of that week, Mark reluctantly agreed to cooperate with the listing before Eleanor's lawyer had to file anything. For the first time, the life they had been showing off no longer matched the life they could actually afford. While Mark and Chloe struggled, Eleanor rebuilt herself. She rented a quiet high-rise apartment downtown, smaller than her old house but completely hers. With no lunches to pack and no laundry waiting, she joined yoga, started a book club, watched matinee movies, and slowly remembered how to live on her own terms. Financially, she was more than fine. Despite Mark and Chloe's arrogant assumption that she was completely dependent on them, Eleanor had carefully invested the remaining money from her house sale years ago. Combined with her teacher's pension, she was completely comfortable. She hired a real estate lawyer to handle the townhouse and asked him to keep every conversation in writing. From that point on, Mark could call her as a son, but the house would be handled like business. One afternoon, while having lunch with a friend at a downtown bistro, she caught her reflection in the window. The tired pull around her mouth had softened. The shadows under her eyes were lighter. For the first time in a long while, she recognized herself. Her phone buzzed in her leather purse. It was Mark. He had been calling every day, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to begging. She hadn't answered a single one. Her lawyer handled the business. She handled her peace. She took out her phone, looked at his name on the screen, and simply pressed the silence button. She took a bite of her salad, smiling as the sun warmed her face. A few days after the unanswered calls, the doorbell of Eleanor's downtown apartment rang. She checked the security monitor and sighed deeply. It was Mark and Chloe. They looked absolutely exhausted. Mark had dark circles under his eyes, and Chloe looked pale and defeated. Leo was not with them. That told Eleanor they had come to talk, not to ask for help. Eleanor hesitated, then buzzed them up. When she opened the door, Mark and Chloe stepped into her sunlit living room and stopped. They had expected a cramped senior studio. Instead, they saw clean white walls, a green sofa, fresh flowers, and a balcony view that made Chloe lower her eyes. "Wow, Mom, this place is incredible," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper as he looked at the expensive art on the walls. "Thank you. Please, sit down," Eleanor said, gesturing to the green velvet sofa. She didn't offer them anything to drink. Chloe sat down, pressed both hands to her face, and started crying before she could finish a sentence. "Eleanor, I am sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I was arrogant. I treated your help like something I was owed. My mom came to stay, and I finally understood the difference between someone visiting and someone holding a family together. I am ashamed of what I said that night." Mark reached out and grabbed Eleanor's hand. "Mom, please come back. Mom, please come back. The refinance was denied. We're listing the house because we can't afford the buyout, and we can't maintain the property. We'll find a new place, together. We'll put everything in writing this time. We'll find a new place, together. We'll put everything in writing this time. We'll pay for groceries, childcare, whatever is fair. Just please, forgive us. We are drowning without you. I miss my mom." Eleanor looked at her son and daughter-in-law. She felt sadness, yes, but not guilt. Their exhaustion was real. Their regret sounded real too, but none of it erased what she had heard from the hallway 6 weeks earlier. Eleanor gently but firmly pulled her hand away from Mark's desperate grasp. She handed Chloe a tissue box from the glass coffee table, waiting patiently for the younger woman's heavy sobs to subside before speaking. "I forgive you," Eleanor said. "I do. I don't want to spend the rest of my life carrying anger inside my own chest. But forgiveness does not mean we go back to the way things were." Mark looked up, a glimmer of hope sparking in his tired eyes. "So you'll help us look for a new house. Maybe something with an even better guest suite for you." Eleanor shook her head slowly. "No, Mark. I'm not moving back in with you. Not now, not ever. Once the sale is finished, you will take your share of the equity and buy whatever home you can afford on your own. I will take my half and continue living exactly where I am." Chloe sniffled, looking up in sheer disbelief. "But we want you back. We promise things will be different this time. We'll set strict rules. We won't ask you to cook or clean." "Chloe, you're missing the point," Eleanor said. "You needed space to become an independent family. I needed space to remember who I am when I'm not serving everyone else. I like this life. I like my peace. And I like not planning my day around someone else's dinner." "So, what happens to us?" Mark asked, his voice cracking with emotion, realizing the safety net was truly gone forever. "You start living within your real life," Eleanor said. "You hire the help you can afford. You split the chores. You learn to budget. You run your own household without expecting me to quietly hold it together from the background. That is how you become the family you kept pretending you already were. 3 months later, the townhouse was officially sold. After the mortgage and closing costs were paid, Eleanor took her 50% of the remaining equity and moved it straight into her retirement portfolio. Mark and Chloe used their share to buy a much smaller, modest, 3-bedroom house in a different suburb. It was not the lifestyle they had liked to show people, but it was the life they could actually afford. They found a reliable after-school sitter and created a strict chore chart. They argued sometimes. They ate frozen pizza more often than they liked. And they were constantly exhausted. But they were finally functioning as responsible, independent adults. They had learned the hard way that family support is a privilege, never a fundamental right. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Eleanor drove her SUV to their modest home. She was carrying a box of fancy bakery cupcakes and a small educational toy for Leo. When she knocked on the door, Leo answered, screaming with joy and hugging her legs tightly. Mark and Chloe came out of the kitchen, looking tired but genuinely happy to see her. They didn't ask her to wash a single dish. They didn't ask her to fold a stray blanket. They simply treated her as an honored guest, over dinner, which Chloe had cooked herself. The conversation was light and pleasant. There was no hidden resentment, no passive-aggressive comments, and absolutely no expectations. Eleanor spent 3 hours playing with her grandson, laughing until her sides hurt. At sunset, Eleanor kissed Leo's forehead, hugged Mark and Chloe, and walked to her car without carrying a plate, a laundry basket, or anyone else's guilt. She had not destroyed them. She had stepped aside so they could learn to walk on their own. Love was not surrender. That night, she watched the city lights from her balcony, completely at peace. If you have ever watched someone mistake kindness for weakness, share your thoughts in the comments. Did Eleanor do the right thing? Or should she have given them one more chance?